It's a June 27th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the Wagner Group chief's first statement after his mutiny. Yevgeny Prigozhin insists he initiated Saturday's march on Moscow not to overthrow the Russian government, but to prevent his group from being destroyed. Russian leader Vladimir Putin says all attempts to sow chaos are destined to fail. The southern parts of South Korea will continue to be soaked under the monsoon rain, while the summer heat will be back here in the capital area. The underwater tunnel for Japan's Fukushima wastewater release is now complete. There'll be a final check on all the related facilities on Wednesday. Central regions of South Korea are expected to see a break from the wet weather on Tuesday, as the monsoon rain pushes down to southern regions. In the meantime, the summer heat will be back here in place here in Seoul. Our Lee Soo-jin starts us off this morning.
Temperatures are set to jump in South Korea in areas seeing respite from this season's monsoon rain. According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, central regions including Seoul will see a lull in downpours as the rain has moved south. Southern regions are currently experiencing rainfall of up to 10 millimeters per hour, accompanied by thunder and lightning. And rainfall of 200 millimeters or more is expected on Jeju Island, and at least 120 millimeters is predicted for Chungcheongdo provinces today. Precipitation in the south is forecasted to continue until Wednesday. Temperatures in areas where the rain has temporarily stopped will rise significantly during the day, with temperatures reaching 28 degrees Celsius in Seoul and 32 degrees in Daegu. Feels like temperatures will be even more, and it will feel uncomfortably muggy with the added humidity from all the rain. Heavy monsoon rain is expected nationwide again towards the end of the week. South Korea's monsoon typically lasts around a month and brings rainfall ranging from between 350 and 500 millimeters, around one-third of the country's annual rainfall. The amount of rainfall has surged in recent years, however, with the frequency of torrential downpours of 30 millimeters or more per hour increasing by more than 20% since the beginning of the 2000s. In addition, while in the past rainfall was mostly concentrated in the monsoon season, in recent summers there has been more rain after the end of the monsoon in August. This summer, the nation is expected to see even more precipitation after the monsoon season ends due to the effects of the El Niño weather pattern. The Korea Meteorological Administration said many areas may experience heavy downpours as late in the year as into the fall, and urged people in areas that are especially prone to flooding to continue to remain alert. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The chief of the Wagner Group has spoken for the first time since the apparent insurrection over the weekend. He says the goal was not to overthrow Russia's political leadership, but a protest to protect his group. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Speaking for the first time since the weekend's insurrection, Wagner Group's chief Yevgeny Prigozhin released an audio message on Telegram on Monday. During the 11-minute-long message, the Wagner chief says the group's march towards Moscow started because of an injustice and that the move was not aimed at removing Russian President Vladimir Putin and his government. He also added that the weekend's protest was aimed at sending a message to Russian military leaders over their ineffective decision-making during the war in Ukraine, which threatened the lives of members of the Wagner Group. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin, in an address to the nation Monday, said the armed rebellion would have been suppressed anyway. Putin also said the civil solidarity showed that any blackmail and attempts to organize an internal mutiny will end in defeat, referring to the mutiny. During his address, the Russian president also thanked the Wagner Group fighters who made the right decision and halted their advance towards Moscow. Putin said that those soldiers would be given the opportunity to continue serving Russia by entering into a contract with the Ministry of Defense or other law enforcement agencies, or returning to their families. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden, making his first remarks since the insurrection, said Monday that the West had nothing to do with the Wagner Group incident. He also noted that it was too early to tell how the incident will unfold going forward, but said the U.S. and its allies, including Ukraine, would be monitoring closely. Biden's comments followed remarks by Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, where he said Russian special services are investigating whether Western intelligence services were involved in the mutiny. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The leaders of South Korea, the U.S., and Japan are seeking to hold a trilateral summit in Washington this summer. According to Japan's Asahi Shimbun on Monday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, U.S. President Joe Biden, and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida are coordinating to meet at the end of August. They're likely to discuss North Korea's nuclear and missile development. Now, this came as Biden invited Yoon and Kishida to a summit during the three leaders' brief meeting held on the sidelines of the G7 summit last month. Japan's release of Fukushima wastewater is drawing closer, with the underwater tunnel to be used for its discharge now complete. And the final check on all the related facilities will take place on Wednesday. Han Sang-woo has the latest.
The underwater tunnel that Japan is planning to use this summer to release wastewater from its destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant is now complete. According to Fukushima Central Television, excavators used to dig the tunnel for a pipeline were removed Monday morning with the help of a large crane. The completion comes after a one-day delay, as the Tokyo Electric Power Company suspended the withdrawal on Sunday due to high seas. Japan's Nuclear Regulation Authority is scheduled to conduct a final check on Wednesday to ensure that all facilities for the wastewater release function properly.
TEPCO began a trial run of those facilities, including the 1 kilometer-long underwater tunnel, on June 12th. As far as we know, that test run will likely conclude tomorrow on Tuesday.
It's widely expected Japan will discharge the wastewater treated by its advanced liquid processing system after the International Atomic Energy Agency clears it with a soon-to-be-released report on the issue. Public anxiety over the safety of the wastewater release lingers in South Korea, though, prompting the government to hold daily weekday briefings since June 15th in an effort to keep the people updated and informed on what will happen moving forward. Fielding questions on Monday, First Vice Minister of Government Policy Coordination, Park Gu-yeon, told reporters that the currently adopted method of releasing the wastewater into the sea was final. He added that reversing the plan to go back to the stage of negotiating other methods of disposal with Japan and the international community, such as solidifying the water, was not an option at this point.
The current plan of discharging the water was finalized following discussions with the IAEA after it was judged to be the most realistic given safety considerations and scientific precedents.
Han Sang-woo, Arirang News.
South Korean military authorities say they have salvaged North Korea's first spy satellite after its failed first launch last month. The country's military reportedly retrieved an object believed to be a military reconnaissance satellite. Now, this comes after it was said that nearly 180 pieces of debris were reported to have landed in the West Sea between China and the Korean Peninsula. The suspected military satellite has been transferred to a military research facility in Daejeon for further analysis. The satellite, known as Mannikyang-1, was designed to take high-resolution images of Earth to provide intelligence for the regime. North Korea's two main staple foods, rice and corn, are no longer affordable up in the north. According to a new report by 38 North, market prices have gone higher, indicating the regime is struggling to feed its population. For more, we're joined by Mr. Patrick Cronin this morning. Good morning.
Hello.
According to 38 North, like I mentioned just before, food prices at North Korean markets suggest serious food shortages. Now, is this a result of COVID-19 border closure?
Well, it's hard to say with North Korea, but of course, prices are up almost everywhere with respect to food. And COVID has undoubtedly caused inflation and price rises and food shortages in North Korea over the last 3 years. That's why we've started to see their borders open with China this year, because they are desperate to try to bring in both some more revenue, but also food commodities.
Right. High food prices, definitely, like you mentioned, are a headache for the entire globe, but especially a big headache for North Korea, I'm sure.
Indeed. I mean, the food has been chronically short for years. COVID has verifiably reduced the production of food. There was bad weather last year as well in North Korea, contributing to their production problems. So there's no doubt there are food shortages, not just in the capital, but especially outside of the capital.
Right, and especially now that the Korean Peninsula is under the annual monsoon season, I'm sure the food situation is not going to be any better this summer.
The outlook is rather bleak, and North Korea needs to both increase its revenue and imports from China, as well as to try to consider letting in humanitarian assistance by ensuring that humanitarian organizations are allowed to ensure that food goes to those who need it.
Then is reopening the border of the regime's border is the best choice? I mean, what do you think they should do to deal with all the economic difficulties and challenges at the moment?
Well, indeed, opening the border, even the first 4 months of this year, has brought in approximately $685 million, according to reports. That's about $2 billion a year from China. That's 90% of what it was before COVID back in 2019. On top of that, $2 to $3 billion a year through the illicit economy, half of which is being used for things like the satellite launch and missile launches. Their economy is in dire straits, and they need to open up further on their border, and that's why they've just opened up this week another border crossing, and presumably Chinese commodities, food, will be coming in, and iron ore from North Korea will be going out.
Right, and actually the latest movement was detected at the border between Musan in North Hamgyong province and China's Nanping, right, with freight trains passing through the border. What could they be carrying?
Well, again, that's a very good route for iron ore from North Korea to be exported into China, something that North Korea has in abundant supply. But more importantly, I think it's what they're importing from China, and that's undoubtedly more food. They're short some 100 million tons of food commodities, and they've only brought in tens of thousands by most accounts.
I'm sure they're much in need of necessities, including food at the moment.
Indeed, all the necessities in North Korea are in short supply, and North Korea has basically admitted that there are short supplies. They've also admitted to price rises, although they've denied reports of starvation or even hearsay about cannibalism, for instance.
Exactly. That's why all the market prices are going up and have gone up dramatically if we are comparing the pre-pandemic levels.
Yeah, I think the Kim regime had managed to get better political control because of COVID and the closed borders, but he paid a huge economic price, and now he needs both dollars and yuan. He needs more Chinese commodities. He needs anything he can get to prevent a mass famine on the scale of, say, the 1990s, the Arduous March.
Right. But with the borders actually opening up, there are also concerns that thousands of North Korean defectors who have been detained in China could be repatriated through that border. I mean, how likely is that then?
Well, it's highly likely that China will want to repatriate the North Koreans. What they call economic migrants have come into China. Now that the borders are lifting, China has a long record of sending back tens of thousands of these refugees. So undoubtedly, this would be a good place for them to repatriate those 2,000 defectors or refugees. And they're likely to face political torment and coercion and interrogation if they are repatriated forcibly back to North Korea.
Right, a clear violation of the human rights of those North Korean defectors, right?
It is, and that's why the UN Commission of Inquiry needs to investigate exactly what China's doing and see whether through the UN Human Rights Commission of Inquiry they can hold accountable China for forcible repatriation of North Koreans. This is a human rights violation, and it needs to be stopped.
Right. Let's also talk about North Korea's first military spy satellite that ended in failure. Now, South Korean military authorities have retrieved some debris of that satellite. Now, how much of information of the satellite can we actually find out then?
Well, depending on how much of the satellite they actually recovered,
Right.
quite a bit, because the satellite that was placed on that missile has not been seen. And now if it's being carefully investigated, they'll be able to know exactly where the technology came from, the level of the sophistication of the technology for a reconnaissance satellite. It could be that it's appallingly bad, or it could be that it's strikingly good. And has it come from China, Russia? Where has it come from? And I think that information is going to be extremely important for South Korea's government and for the United States and other allies to understand exactly what North Korea is hoping to do with this reconnaissance constellation that they hope to put up in space.
Then if we actually do find out that some parts or technologies and of that satellite are from Russia or China, then, I mean, what's going to happen next?
Well, there's always a possibility of some sanctions being placed on specific firms, but I wouldn't hold my breath about the effect of those sanctions. Nonetheless, calling out Russia, China, or any other country that might be violating international sanctions on North Korea imposed by the UN Security Council should impose some costs. And I think it is important for South Korea to take the lead in verifying what exactly North Korea is bringing into the country to spy on South Korea and in these reconnaissance satellites. So it's an important issue to settle. And if South Korea can do that through this salvage operation, I think that's a significant gain for the South Korean government.
Right. South Korea and the U.S. will jointly actually work on finding information about that satellite. So let's wait and see how long it takes and how much information we can get out of the satellite.
Indeed. Hopefully a good deal can be found out through this salvage operation. It's also notable that South Korea was able to dig this out of the sea before the Chinese, who were competing for that salvage operation.
Right. All right, Mr. Cronin, thank you so much for your insight this morning.
Thank you.
Over in the Middle East, Korea's Hyundai Engineering Construction secured a major deal worth $5 billion with state oil producer Aramco for a petrochemical plant in Saudi Arabia. Our Moon Hae-ryun reports.
South Korea's construction orders in the Middle East are booming. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, South Korean construction firm Hyundai Engineering and Construction signed a major petrochemical plant construction contract on Saturday with Saudi Arabia's Aramco. The $5 billion project is the largest order a South Korean company has won from Saudi Arabia to date, bringing the total of overseas construction orders in the first half of the year to $13.7 billion. This tops the $12 billion recorded in the first half of last year. Hyundai E&C will be responsible for the construction of a mixed feed cracker plant to produce ethylene as well as storage and support facilities. South Korea came out on top despite the fierce competition with the Infrastructure Ministry's formation of the One-Team Korea support team for overseas orders and the diplomatic meeting between the minister and Aramco CEO back in March. The South Korean government has been concentrating its efforts on partnerships with Middle East nations in various fields such as defense, IT, and renewable energy, as well as petrochemicals as it looks to improve its weakened exports following the global economic downturn. To keep up this momentum, experts say that cooperation between companies will be crucial.
In order to put the trade balance and overseas construction orders in the black, South Korean companies will need to share relevant information to prevent cutthroat competition in its diversifying market.
President Yoon Suk-yeol commented on Sunday that this latest endeavor will strengthen economic cooperation between South Korea and Saudi Arabia. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in Australia. The Supreme Court there has dismissed Russia's bid to keep hold of the construction site of its new embassy in the capital, Canberra. Now, the court's decision on Monday follows a legal challenge by Russia. A Russian diplomat who had been squatting at the site was seen leaving shortly after the ruling. It comes after Australia introduced legislation in mid-June to end Russia's lease of the land over security concerns. The new embassy site is only about 400 meters away from Australia's Parliament building. Now, Russia obtained the lease in 2008 and was granted permission to build in 2011, but no buildings have been completed there. A Kremlin spokesman called the move part of a, quote, Russophobic hysteria sweeping the West. Now, in a move described by the U.S. State Department as deeply troubling, Israel on Monday began approving the development of over 5,000 new homes for Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. Plans for the developments were given the green light by Israel's Supreme Planning Council. Settlements built on the land taken by Israel in the 1967 Middle East War are one of the main issues in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Among those approved, some 800 developments have secured final approval. Washington has previously said that Israeli settlement expansion could prevent a potential two-state solution with Palestinians. Now, the world's oldest Nobel Prize winner, Dr. John Goodenough, has died at the age of 100. According to the University of Texas, where he worked, the engineering professor passed away in Austin on Sunday. He played a major role in developing the lithium-ion battery, which now powers millions of electric vehicles and other devices. His contribution in the field of batteries saw him awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2019. Born to American parents in 1922 in Germany, Dr. Goodenough served in the U.S. Army as a meteorologist during World War II and got his PhD from the University of Chicago. And finally, Hollywood actors Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney are part of a group of buyers that are acquiring a 24% stake in Formula One racing team Alpine. Now, this is according to parent company Renault on Monday. The investment group, which includes Otro Capital and Redbird Capital Partners, has invested $218 million into the team. Alpine are the fifth-rated team in this year's F1 Constructors' Championship. For Alpine, the deal is a way to boost the team's media profile, as F1 is exploding in popularity across the US. The actors are also owners of the Welsh football club Wrexham.
Good morning. After a rainy night, most parts are waking up to a dry and refreshing start to the day. Well, rain clouds are now heading towards the east and will drop rain there through the first half of the day. But the south coast and Jeju Island will receive showers throughout the day. Now, Jeju Island could see 20 to 30 millimeters an hour of heavy rain from this afternoon into tonight. So if you're having an early summer vacation on the resort island, stay safe. Staying on Jeju, northern parts of the island had the season's first tropical night with overnight temperatures exceeding 25 degrees Celsius. And afternoon highs in most regions will be 3 to 5 degrees higher than Monday, but the high humidity will make it feel quite uncomfortable. Skies, though, will get sunnier with stronger UV rays, so by the time you head out for lunch, it will be sunny and will be a soupy day. After a short break from the monsoon rain, it will rain nationwide again from Thursday. Southern regions in Jeju to see rain into the first weekend of July. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. Have a lovely day.